Welcome back and thank you for watching. Today we're going to work on this box I've been talking about. You're going to need a hobby knife. I always leave this one in the preview because this is the most common one that's out there and everyone tends to use this one. I will not be using this one today. I will be again using my favorite utility knife. I'm going to put this aside. I'm going to put the safety cap on, put it away. You're also going to need glue. You can use Elmer's school glue, but as I mentioned previously, you're going to want to let that dry. It's going to take a lot more time to dry. So if you have not already, I do highly recommend that you pick up some Aleene's Original Tacky Glue. You can get this pretty much $2 for 8 ounces, which is a phenomenal price for what you're getting. It also sets very quickly and it becomes workable within the hour. So that's the important thing for me is speed. All this stuff takes time, so you're going to need some patience to do it. You're also going to need a ruler at some point, obviously. You're going to need scissors at some point. You're going to need an Emery board probably at some point, or if you don't have an Emery board, you can use sandpaper. I recommend the grit be 220 or higher. The higher it is, the finer it is. You're also going to need to have handy, you're going to want to have like a damp cloth or a paper towel. Any paper towel is fine. Something to just wipe your glue on. And also damp cloth. If you don't have a tack cloth, when you're doing a little bit of sanding, a damp cloth works beautifully. You may want a paintbrush or a sponge to spread your glue, but that's optional. You can use your finger since we're using all non-toxic water-based materials today. But please go through my cutting wood tutorial prior to, and adult supervision is always required when working with sharp blades and scissors. So it will work for children, but only if the parent cuts out all the pieces first. You're going to want a clean work surface. Now mine, again, I previously mentioned I use an old piece of drywall which I covered with vinyl contact paper. You could do something like this, or also I found really handy clothing boxes that you put your Christmas gifts in. They actually work really well, especially when you need to move it. And if you need to move it, you're gonna probably need to move it if you're using the Elmer school glue, because like I said, that takes a really long time to dry. Now the first thing you probably should do is cut out your base and your lid. Now these are 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters. This is what I call fake wood. It is cardboard. It is 100% recycled. I took it right out of my recycle bin. I picked some nice sides to have on the outside. And depending on the thickness of your cardboard, you really can't tell. One of these has 4 layers, one of them has 3 layers, but they are pretty much the same size. And the goal here is to have them be also approximately the same size as your popsicle sticks. Now I'm going to set these aside, and you should do these first so that they have lots of time to harden and dry. When they're drying, you're going to want to put some weight on there. I would go with a heavy book, but make sure there's no glue. You don't want to glue it to your book. Later in the project, you're also going to need a smaller one. This is 89 millimeters by 70 millimeters. But now this is a little bit rough, but that's okay, because we're going to be doing more with it later. Meanwhile, for this piece, just get it started for now. Just put your 2 pieces together, as I previously described in the video. If you haven't watched that video, you may want to check it out. And the reason why is because we're not exactly sure how thick we want this yet. Most likely we're going to have it the same thickness, but just to be on the safe side, we're going to delay putting another layer on that piece. You're also going to need 44 total popsicle sticks. I wrote down here you need 24 that are 97 millimeter, and that's for your walls. You're going to need 8 that are 56 millimeters, and those will be supports for your walls. And then you're going to need some pieces for your lid. I actually don't recommend that you pre-cut those pieces. I did, of course. They're here. I have my 70 millimeters, my 85 millimeters, my 87, my 89. But these may not actually be the right size when I get to that point, because people are people. We're human. We make mistakes. Also, not all popsicle sticks are created equal. And you want to keep that in mind when you're cutting out your 97 millimeter ones. You're really going to want to flip through and inspect your wood before you start cutting. Otherwise, you're kind of wasting your time. Now, like this one here, I don't know if you can see it, but it is definitely warped. It is bent. And so I put that in the do something else with it pile. This one here is literally missing a whole notch. It's not nearly as wide. And so it's not a good piece. It's not going to be a good piece. And this one also has bending. This one has a warp actually in the middle. It's hard to see on camera, but you can feel it. You can feel it's not straight. It's not quite right. So these are, I'm not going to throw these away. These will make good practice pieces. They're good for anything you just want to glue some stuff together. Who knows? You'll find a use for them. Also, as you're cutting your wood, you might want to start a little bucket of ends. I have lots of these. I do lots of cutting, so I have lots of these. And these make actually pretty good decorations later. There's some other little things you can do with them, which we may go over another time. But you want to definitely start a little pile of those and hang on to them. I don't like to waste anything if I can avoid it. This is a really easy craft. Once your sticks are cut out, you need 44 total again, and your 3 pieces of fake wood. You're going to need the ability to cut the wood safely. If you haven't watched that video, please check that out. The ability to make the fake wood, again, check that out. You may need to improvise a little bit, and you're definitely going to need some patience while you're waiting on glue to dry. Alright, so now I got all the talking out of the way, I hope. I'm going to move these aside and start showing you how to put your walls together. I'm only going to do one wall for demonstration. I have walls pre-done. But you're going to take your 97 millimeter and you're going to have 6 of those. And you may want to line them up, make sure they're reasonably flush. If you like one side better than the other, that's the side you're going to want to put down. Now, get your glue. Pick up a stick. If you're using Elmer's glue, if you're using Elmer's school glue, nothing special, nothing quick dry, just your basic Elmer's wood school glue, you're going to want to glue this stick and this stick. And you're going to want to put a nice thin layer on both. And then you're going to wait a few minutes and try to let that get tacky before you put them together. Because, like I said, Elmer's takes a really long time to dry. It will work for you, but I still recommend that you invest in the A-leans, especially if you're going to be doing more than one of these. It's definitely worth having for the price. Now, we're just going to go ahead and take the A-leans, and we're going to glue. Whoops. Bottle's starting to get low. When my bottles are low, I like to lay them on their side so that they come out more quickly. And I'm going to smooth it. You can use a sponge for this, or you can use your finger. It's non-toxic. Now we're going to lay this down next to this one. Get my rag. And we're going to use this to line it up. Now we're going to check and make sure that there is about 1 stick's worth of space between the end. That's going to be your indent. That seems good. I'm going to just smooth that glue out. Later, if you dry, you have piles of glue, you can take your emery board and sand them off. If they don't come off easily, you can dip your emery board in some water and sand that. I'm going to take my next piece, bit of glue, my cat's trying to get in. I hear him. We're going to press these together. I'm going to check, make sure there's just a little bit of space on both ends. Get our next piece, some glue. Trying to do this quickly, so it might be making a little bit of a mess. Smooth. Stick. Always check your ends. Make sure you have enough space. You'll be able to slide it in. You'll understand when I get to the next part. I already have some glue. Tiny bit more. You don't have to worry with white glue because it will dry clear. So it doesn't. If you overuse it, it'll be fine. Let's double check. It's a little bit too far down. Push it up a little bit. Alright, it looks pretty good. I have glue all over the place. Do again. Paper towel. And we're going to stick it. It's a tiny bit wobbly. That does not make me happy. There you have it. Now, if you used Elmer's glue, do not pick that up. It will fall apart. You might just want to double check before your glue dries. Make sure your ends are straight. Make sure that you only focus on the one end. You're going to have variations in your cutting. It's just human nature. We can't always get a straight line, but get it as close as you can. We have a little bit of a bend in that one. I should have inspected my wood a little bit better. The aliens is going to tack nicely and fairly quickly. Now, once you have your 6 put together, you're going to take your 56mm support. You're going to put some glue on there. Thin that out. Get them edges. I'm a fanatic about edges. Gotta get them edges always. Now we're going to take this. We're going to look at the end. Now that one has a little bit of a bite to it, so I want that one on the bottom. This one looks pretty and smooth, so that one's going to be at the top. Now your top should be the longest one, and what you're going to do is you're going to line this up at the very, very top, flush, and with your margin. We're going to press that down. And again, if you used Elmer's, do not pick that up. The whole thing is going to fall apart. You want to leave that sit for at least an hour if you've used Elmer's school glue. If you've used wood glue or the aliens glue or any other glue that you're familiar with and you know how fast it takes to tack, then you can pick it up if you know. Maybe press it down. Give it a look. I'm a little bit annoyed by that bend. I feel like it's going to work out fine later. Alright, so this is what one wall should look like. I'm going to pause briefly, and then I'm going to show you all 4 walls. This will be a good time for you to also pause and go and glue together your 4 walls. You want all 4 walls to look identical. Okay, now once you have your 4 walls done, as you can see, I've done all 4 walls here. Remember, these are the top. The one that sticks out is the top, top left, top left, top left. And what you're going to do is lay them down and fit them together. Some may not fit. That's fine. It's going to happen. Some is going to fit really very nicely, like so. This one fits really nicely. This one also fits really nicely. Now don't stop there. You want to take this piece off here and make sure that it fits nicely to this piece. And it really does not. So I'm going to rearrange just slightly until I find that all my pieces are matching up. Now that one's a little bit tight and it has a little bit of gaps, but it will work. And then it fits beautifully over here. So let's try that one. Let's try this one. And this fits beautifully there. And this fits what I'm going to call good enough here. So now you have your walls set up. You can actually, at this point, stand them up. And if you're careful, you'll see that they all fit together beautifully. Now, if a big gust of wind came, or, you know, if my cat got to it, or whatever, of course that's not going to hold, it's going to fall. But once we glue it down, it's going to be beautiful. Just very quickly find them edges that match again. Since I knocked it over, alright, that'll work. Alright, so now we're going to start with this one. And your glue is going to go on this thick edge here that you created when you put the two together. And it's going to go also on the little sticky outies. Do not put glue on these ends. They will be visible. So we're going to get our glue. And for this part, I like to use a paintbrush. Now it's optional. You don't have to use a paintbrush. But to get into all the little cracks, I prefer to use the paintbrush. Make sure your paintbrush is clean and dry. Take your first piece. I forgot to lay my bottle down. It's going to take a second. The Aleene's is very thick. This piece, blonde moment. I'm going to put these two together. Now the Aleene's does not take that long to dry, as previously mentioned, but I'm just going to let that set, and I'm going to go ahead and do these two pieces. My goal here was to build this joint because this is one of the easiest joints to do, and it's pretty strong and you won't need a ton of supports. Now, I actually want to get on this before the other piece dries and glue them together. I'm going to do this side. You can see what I'm doing. Glue, glue, glue. I'm going to use my brush. Just going to tap that in there. Make sure I get all those edges. Take this one, stand that back up, put those two together. This is going to be a lot harder if you're using Elmer's, because you're going to want to glue both sides and you're going to want to wait for that to tack before you mess with it. But you also have to find the right balance where it's not completely dry, because you also want it to be relaxed. You don't want a lot of stress on this piece. I'm going to glue the final corner. I'm going to use my brush. Oops. I'm going to use my brush to thin it, spread it. Doesn't have to be perfect. As I've said before, handmade items are not supposed to be perfect. Now, all together. What you're going to want to do now is just inspect your work. Turn it. If you see any gaps, possibly push them together. If you're using Elmer's, you may actually want to check it every once in a while to see if there's any splitting. Now, if there's any way for you to clamp this with your Elmer's, that would be even better. I don't recommend you put the bottom on yet. We're going to be doing, there's some other things I want to talk about before we put the bottom on. I usually put my bottoms on at the very last moment. So I'm going to pause and let that set for about 10 minutes, and I'm going to come back and talk about it some more. Okay, now this has set quite a bit, and now, as you can see, we have nice joints, nice corner joints. Almost professional looking. Look at that. It's very beautiful. It's exactly what I was going for, so I feel successful. Now we're going to take our remaining 4 56 millimeters. I like to use these when I'm making my fake wood. I like to use the scraps to wrap my wood as I cut it, so I know what size they are without actually having to check what size they are. You want to make sure, again, that your glue is dry before you go messing with this. If you are using Elmer's, I would leave it set for at least 24 hours before I would touch it. That's just my personal. Even if you feel like it's strong, you'd be surprised. This will come apart very, very easily. Even with the Aleen's, I'm not super confident, but we're not doing a whole lot of stuff with it right now. What we're just going to do right now is put on this second support beam. And how we're going to do that, first you want to look and figure out where your top is. Now, I'm a little bit off on some of my support beams. Some are not flush with the bottom, some are not flush with the top. So I'm just going to pick the best side, and I think I like this side the best. So this is going to be my top, and this is going to be my bottom, and I'm going to take a piece of wood and bump that again. The first thing I'm going to do is put a small amount of glue in the corners. It's a little difficult to see. If you can see, put the glue in the corners. Then maybe even put some on the wood. Pick your top. Make sure you pick a side that looks nice. Sometimes our cuts are not that perfect. I have a little bit of shadow today. Roll away just very quickly and thin that out. Also going to run my brush into that corner. I definitely want the glue on the wall itself and the original support that we put down. That's going to help keep it all together forever. And to show you how we now have what I consider a fully supported corner. Is it perfect? No, but it's going to hold and it's going to be beautiful. And now I'm going to go ahead and do the other 4, and then I will come back, and or the other 3, and then I will come back and show you the next step. Now I'm fairly confident that this is dry, and this is our bottom piece. This is the main. This is your main box right here. This is pretty much it. It's a good size. Keep lots of stuff in there. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to set this aside and actually let it dry some more. And we're going to start putting together the lid while we wait. And to do that, I've already put together one lid. I'm actually working on 2 of these at once. That's why I have 4 walls already put together. Now, the lid is going to work like I want it. If things go properly, you've already seen the box because I've put it together and taken a picture, and that's my cover art for this video. And the box looks like this. Not glued down, but it'll be a smooth box with no obvious openings, no obvious handles. We can add handles later. Currently I'm not planning to add any handles. I just want it to be kind of a stealthy box. And what we've made for the inside to keep the lid on is this piece here, and this will inevitably attach to this, and then it's going to fit down and you'll be able to lift it off And the nice thing about this is I've decided that all this space in here needs to be used. So while this lid, and you can see I did a little bit of deco with the ends, and I didn't really sit with them very long. I just picked out a few that looked about the same size and I glued them down. I didn't play with them or anything. But they do tell me where my secret hiding space is. We've put a secret area. Ha! So I'm going to show you how to do that. Now the reason why we didn't cut these pieces ahead of time, although I did, because I've done this a couple times, so I know I'm very familiar with my popsicle sticks and how they end up working out for me. The reason why I didn't cut them, or I advised you not to cut them ahead of time, is because sometimes popsicle sticks, not all popsicle sticks are the same. Some will not glue down properly, some will have little bends in them. I can see little gaps forming as the glue dries, etc., etc. So before we start to put the lid together, we want to measure our usable space on the inside, just to make sure. Now I work in millimeters because I can get more exact that way. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to line that up with my 0 and check. And it looks to be just about 90 millimeters, which is why we have 89. Because I like to minus 1 millimeter just to be safe. It should be the same all the way around since we used the same sticks all the way around. This one looks a tiny bit wider. The lid may move slightly. If you want to go up to 90 and take your chances, go for it. If you can do 89.5 millimeters, even better. But we're going to go with 89 millimeters just to be on the safe side. I'm going to set this aside. Set that aside. Now, this is going to be a little more difficult, especially if... Don't mix up your sticks. I have 87, I have 89. Now, I've finagled with this a bit, and the best way I came up with is to take your long stick, put some glue on there, just a little bit, and it's going to be on the side, not on the edge, but on the side. Take your shorter stick, don't mix them up. Take your shorter stick and flush it to the edge. Make sure it is even. And it should be making kind of a right angle. I'm not super impressed with the way that's laying, but that's going to happen. That's going to happen. I could go and get another stick, but honestly, I could sit here and play sticks all day. Sometimes you just have to go with what you got. Now while that's tacking, I probably should have thinned it out. I'm going to take another long one, another short one. Don't mix them up. I'm going to put the glue on the long one. The reason I do that is because there's going to be extra glue on the outside, and I'd rather have extra glue at this point than thin layers. I'm going to thin it out anyway, just so it will tack a little more quickly. Use my damp rag, clean my fingers. This one we are also going to line up again. It doesn't have to be perfect, and if you're using Elmer's glue, you may want to let it sit. You want to glue both sides. Wait a minute, maybe in 10 minutes, until it gets tacky, and then put it together. Your alternative is to sit here and hold it. Do you want to sit here and hold it? You don't want to sit here and hold it. Who wants to sit here and hold it? Nobody. Right. So, yeah, they look the same, but they're not the same. When we turn this, we're going to have an indent here, an indent here. Now, don't mix up your sticks. Do not mix up your sticks. Take the shorter stick. And for the shorter stick, we're going to glue. Going to glue here, and we're going to glue here. And I really should wait longer for these to tack, but I want to just get it all together before the glue actually dries. You get the hang of it, I promise. Now I'm going to take my stick here, and that feels like nice and tacked already, but it's movable, it's adjustable. And I'm going to line that up as best I can. I don't like that side, so I'm going to flip it. I'm going to squeeze. And I'm going to lay it on the other one. In a perfect world, this would be dry already. But it's not. So let's try very carefully not to move that. And get some glue on this other side. Actually, I do need to move that, don't I? This is why it's helpful to have a movable area. I could just slide this back, but my camera thing is attached to the table, so just get some glue. Again, okay, don't mix up your sticks. You should have 2 left that are 89 millimeters, and you should have 1 left that's 87 millimeters, and the 87 millimeters is going to go here and here. And since I've cut this a millimeter short, it should be fairly forgiving. If you're worried about your size, make sure that's nice and square. If you're worried about your cuts, if you feel like maybe there were some angles you didn't like, or if it's looking more like a trapezoid than a square, which happens, take your base, and it should fit perfectly over your lid. And look, it does. There's a little bit of wiggle room, but that's fine. If we want to get rid of that, we could do so later. Right now, I recommend you let that dry for at least 20 minutes, so I'm going to pause while that dries. Again, peeking back at it occasionally. Now, like I said, the Eileen's tacks very quickly, so I want to actually check very quickly and make sure these are hopefully as straight as I can possibly get them. But mistakes can be made, and we will adjust for those mistakes as we go. Now I'm definitely going to pause, and you should too, and let your glue dry. Okay, I think we are tacked enough to be workable again. Some of my sides are a tiny bit crooked in my haste. I didn't line them up quite right, but that's okay. Doesn't matter. It's not that important. We have an extra millimeter to work with. Now you're going to want to take your fake wood, and it's 89 by 70 millimeters, and we only did 2 layers to start with. What we're going to do is we're going to actually drop that in. Mine fits almost perfectly. Make sure that it fits. See if it's thick enough, and I think I actually want 1 more layer. So I've gone ahead and I've added another layer, and it looks pretty perfect. Pretty perfect. Now I'm going to, first thing I'm going to do is put the guides in, and our guides are 85 millimeters. I have 2 sets of guides. One is 70, and these are my 85 millimeter. Now I'm going to check, and I did pre-cut these, and I know that I was rushing a little bit, so they might not actually fit, but yes, thankfully, they pretty much fit perfectly. Nice and perfect. So I'm going to quickly glue those down. I'm just going to put some glue in there. Glue in there. Probably could have let this set a little bit longer. Once I get these guides in, I mean, it's set enough at this point that once I put the guides in, it's not going to go anywhere. I see one corner is trying to break, and that's what happens when you rush things. And I wrote down a list of things to mention, patience being one of them, and clearly I'm not having a whole lot of patience today. Especially if you're working with the Elmers. I mean, that's just, patience is going to be required. I'm just going to stick that in there. Make it flush. Maybe squeeze my crooked end together a little bit. Make sure it's flat. Make sure it's totally flat. Stick the other one in there. And these can be off. If it's a little bit short, that's fine. No one's going to see that. No one's going to see that part. So it's all good. Now, see that? That's where our little slidey drawer. Right? Now, for the back, alright, let's just set that on there right now so you can understand what's happening. Now this is curling a little bit on me because it's not dry. I just glued it very quickly while I was waiting. I'm just gonna bend it back. And I should put it in a book for a day or so before I actually use it. This is why I told you to make your cardboard ahead of time. You want to make your cardboard ahead of time because it takes time to dry. Alright, so now the first thing you want to do is see which way it's going to slide more easily. If you can cut a perfect square, good for you. I cannot. So one way is always going to slide more easily than another. And we don't want it to catch, yeah, see it's popping out over there. So this is going to be going this way. It's going to go this way. This is going to be the front. This is going to be the back. Now for your back, you want to glue. You want to take your, what are the length on these? 85 millimeter? No, these are the remaining 87 millimeter, aren't they? Yes, yes, of course they are. They would be, wouldn't they? Don't mix up your wood. God forbid you end up with just these two left and don't know what to do. Okay, so for these pieces, you're going to only glue the corners. You're going to put that down, make it flush. Make it flush, let it set. Now, sometimes the glue will come out, so we're just very quickly, we're going to put a layer of glue here on our cardboard. Get them edges. Get them edges. Them edges are so important. Get as close to the wood as you can without actually going onto the wood if you can avoid it. Then we're going to put this one on flush again. Now I'm taking that out. I'm going to take that out, put that back, stay. Now I'm going to pull this out very carefully, squeeze. Now I must insist that you allow that to dry before you put it back in here and or leave it in here. If you put it back in here and or leave it in here, other glue may glue it together permanently and you don't want that to happen. Not impressed. Okay, so we also going to need some guides on top because if you just leave that guide, when it's upside down, it's going to fall off. Now, I've measured mine to be 70 millimeters, and these are the last two pieces, and then we're ready to do the base and the top. So that it's all where it's supposed to be. It should be flush, and then, of course, my 70 millimeter does fit nicely. Now, I'm going to take the drawer out and away, let that set and dry, possibly put it into a book, because it's definitely not dry yet. What I'm going to do is take my 70 millimeters, move this glue. Let's get rid of this glue. And put some glue on my 70 millimeter. I'm going to want to make a decision here. Sometimes I don't like one side of the wood, and this side will be seen a bit. I can smooth this with my finger, or I can smooth this with a sponge. The brush is handy, so I'm just going to use the brush. And I put a reasonable amount on there, but also thinned it out as I went. Now I'm going to line it up. It's got to be flush with the edge. And you want to try to make it even with your bottom piece. Do not put that in there until, do not put your drawer in there until that is fully dry. That glue will be an issue. May need to figure out a way to shorten these videos a little bit. Everybody's probably fast forwarding through them at this point. Don't mix up your wood. Double check. Make sure it's the right one. It is. I'm going to put some glue on it. After I pick a side. Get that side better. Okay. Spread. Again, there is glue on this, even on the side where it's not going to be. So definitely do not stick your drawer in there until it dries. But this is it. This is the very, very last piece. I would actually let that sit, not touch it, for at least 24 hours. Now we're going to take our base, and here you may want to decide whether or not you want to paint. If you want to paint, I recommend painting it before you put the walls on, because masking off the wood is going to be kind of difficult. Now if you want to paint all of it same color, go for it. I'm not going to paint this one. I want to keep this one completely blonde. Let's see. I find my bottom. This is my bottom, and I can tell it's my bottom because my tops are flush and even. And we're just going to glue. Just going to glue. So simple. Gluing is the easiest thing ever. I may have overdone it. I usually do. That's why I keep my paintbrush handy. I'm not too worried about excess glue. The cardboard is going to suck that glue right up anyway. Now you're going to want to go, you might want to stand up to do this. Luckily I have the camera pointing straight down, so I can just look at the camera and see what's happening, hopefully. And we want to try to line it up as evenly. Okay, we are now 24 hours later. I had some minor technical difficulties yesterday, so I had to stop, and we're back today though, and everything's had lots of time to dry. And meanwhile, this looks beautiful. I'm so happy with the way this came out. It was a lot of planning initially, and now that I have all my measurements, I could really make as many of these as I want. I am working on 2 at the same time. Later I'm going to do a video and show you how my techniques for decorating. Try to include a few separate elements. Okay, so I don't want to keep talking because this video is pretty long at this point. So we're just going to take our piece today, and we're going to put that on there. Now we're going to try to center this as much as possible. If it's a little bit off, I'm sure it's not really going to matter, but I'm going to keep an eye on my corners and my edges and try to make sure that this all matches up. We're going to put the glue on the wood, and And of course I'm using Aleene's tacky glue as always, and babbling at you while I get it. And here we go. And my bottle's almost empty, and it's the first time I've opened it today. It's a really sunny day, so I apologize if there's a lot of shadow. The sun is my main lighting for these videos. Come on. This is very quickly. It's not supposed to take very long. So this is the end of the video. And I just, at this point, want to get it done. I'm sure you want to get out of here and start gluing some stuff, if you haven't already. And there's quite a bit of glue on there, and that's okay. Because as I said previously, it is going to soak. I do want to smooth that. It's a little bumpy. That's a little too much. It's going to soak right into your cardboard and attach beautifully. I do have my damp paper towel handy to wipe my glue on. And again, we're just going to attempt to center this. I'm actually going to pick that up. I want to get this right on the first try if I can. And that actually looks pretty good. Because I'm using the Aleene's, that's going to tack very quickly. I see glue coming out. It's going to tack very quickly. And I'm not going to be able to move it after a few seconds. So super quickly while it's still wet. I'm just going to slide it on. It is a tiny bit loose, which we could fix later if we chose to, just by adding some sticks on the interior. But I want to keep it a little bit loose in case I decide to add some fabric at any point. And it looks perfect. I'm very happy with the way this came out. And I'm going to end it there. Now, if you wanted to, you could put a handle on it. Now, I've showed you previously that I keep these little ends. Right? Maybe you want to get a couple of these and sand the edges and then glue them down. You may want to get a couple of them and just put them across so you have like a little up and down thing to grab onto to pull it off. Or sometimes I like to get a toothpick and cut off the ends, glue those together, make yourself a little handle, glue that down. The options are just limitless. But my goal in this video was to put together this box with the bare minimum essentials to keep it together. So now the decorating is pretty much up to you, and but I will be coming back with a video after I decide what I want my project to end up looking like. I may actually end up doing 3 of these. I'm working on 2 at the same time because I wasn't sure how this was going to go as far as instruction. I'd like to work as I go, so sitting down and actually calculating all these measurements for your convenience was new to me. This was totally new to me. I usually cut my wood as I go. I don't pay any attention to sizes or actual sizes. I just compare it to other pieces and then glue. And sometimes, especially when you're decorating, you do want it to just, sometimes too much thought is too much thought, and you just want to jump in and just start gluing pieces to this. I mean, this is just perfect bare box, ready for decoration. Whatever you would like to decorate it with. Thank you again for watching my video, and I look forward to seeing you on the next installment of whatever I'm doing next. I'm not even sure right now exactly what I'm going to be doing next. but I'll see you there.